Hey, well, thank you for joining us for another episode. And I feel like I say this every time, but I select great guests. And so I am always excited about the guests. So today we have Tracy Malone. She is an international narcissistic abuse coach, author, podcaster as well. And I love the book, Divorcing Your Narcissist. You Can't Make This Shit Up. Love it, love it, love it. Well organized, well put together, tons of resources. So, Tracy, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me and for reading the book.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, let's just go ahead and dive in. We were kind of thinking about, and structuring our time together today on what I feel like may be most helpful for our listeners.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people are listening, whether they're in the midst of the divorce process, kind of feeling overwhelmed, or they're listening because they haven't quite filed yet and they want to kind of on the down low, right? Start getting their stuff in order and start thinking through things. And so because your area of expertise is, the narcissistic behaviors and things like that, I thought we would kick off with a word that I know that has gotten a lot of attention over the last couple of years, but I think it's never too much to kind of get back to the roots of the definition. So let's talk a little bit about gaslighting. What is it, and what can women that are experiencing do about it?
Sure. So gaslighting is a form of emotional manipulation, right? It is the goal of when someone gaslights you is to make you think that what you heard, saw wasn't true. And the kind of things that they're using in that are I never said that. You're making that up. You're just doing this. The gaslighting in a divorce is crippling to people because they believe it. And it's not like they believe it. So if someone is gaslighting you, telling you you're a bad parent and the whole world is going to know, and I'm going to expose you, right? That's simply not true if you're not a bad parent, right? But it is that kind of crippling knowledge that they defend until the death, right? It's like, no, I'm a great mom. I've always done this, but what's happening is instead of looking at what the gaslighter is saying and doing, right, we're internalizing, I'm a bad mom, and how could he say that? I know I'm not a bad mother. And it just makes them go into a place where they defend themselves, and while they are defending themselves, guess what, they aren't doing what they need to do. And the battle becomes the gaslighting claim. And I had it in my divorce where they said I was a thief and I stole money. And meanwhile, I'm the one with 5,000 sheets submitted, and he was in contempt 6 times for not, sharing any information. I'm like, I'm the organized one. I did our bills. I kept the budget. I was so smart about that. And yet what they attack you for is always your strengths. So if you are a really
Mm,
good financial person, they're going to attack it, right? Because I'm going to defend it. I raised my sword, and I'm like, no. And I got into that loop. That's what they want you in. They want you in that defend yourself mode, because then you are not paying attention to what they're doing. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz behind the black curtain. Don't pay attention to what's back there, because we'll just distract you. It's a distraction in the divorce cycle with a narcissist.
yeah. Well, and it's interesting because there's a couple things that came to mind for me while you were saying that. I mean, I know for me in different periods of life when I've experienced trauma,
Mhm.
um, knowing that I wasn't like that validation of other people that were there or saw what was happening was critical for my healing. Critical.
Mhm.
Because you do start to think, well, maybe they didn't really say that. Maybe I did think, like, was it really that bad? Like all the things. And so I think for people to really have that, that technique is really not only harming them in the present, right? Because you start to question and distract, but it could also be, hindering the healing moving forward because now you're like, well, maybe it didn't really happen and maybe I did make that up, which you didn't, but it certainly is really a hard part of that process. Um, and the other part of it is as people are kind of going through this, and experiencing the gaslighting, I think the other thing that's really, you and I talked briefly about this, and because we're at this part of, the conversation, I think it's important for us to bring up, what if people are experiencing not only that behavior from their soon-to-be ex, but also from their attorney. Any suggestions or things that people could be doing there?
Well, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of really uneducated lawyers out there about this type of abuse. So they give really bad advice. They give advice for the, Cracker Jack box of divorce, but not for someone that is in this kind of a manipulative situation. So, if you have a lawyer that is gaslighting you or telling you, oh, your spouse is so nice, and they're just trying, you have to be more cooperative and trying to edge you up without actually seeing the true picture of what we're up against. This is a place where you have to either point it out to them and speak up, which a lot of victims can't do because they're in trauma and shock, or you end up keeping track of it. I say to people, keep track of how many times the lawyers do these things, because then you make a better decision if you have to get rid of them and move on to another lawyer. So many
Yeah.
of my clients are on their third, fourth, and fifth lawyer just because of that same thing. Is they're not believed, they are doubted. And when you're interviewing a lawyer and you're explaining, let's say you've already had three lawyers and you're explaining what's happened, they will sit there, oh, and I will never do that. Oh, yes, I get it. I will be there for you, right? And so it's about really vetting the next one if you get into that situation, because you don't want someone who's not on your side. And that's what people really need to understand. A lawyer that is, I'll say it, siding with the other side will never have your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
And because they don't have this awareness about the tactics and the damage, it's not just, oh, gaslighting, it's a word. It's like, oh, narcissist is a trendy word. You know what? So is gaslighting. It was the word of 2022. However, no one talks about the damage it does to
Yeah.
somebody who is being gaslit. Their world is imploding. They are feeling hopeless and lost, and they need someone like a lawyer to defend them, to stake up and go, wow, he's putting on quite a show today. Isn't that funny? Ha. That would be a much better example of a response from a lawyer versus someone who's going, oh, come on, let's all be nice, because you are not dealing with someone who can ever be nice. When they deploy black and white thinking on you during a divorce, you are a mortal enemy. And so if your lawyer doesn't understand that concept and how to, work with the other side and not necessarily drink their Kool-Aid, then you're going to have a problem and you may have to move on to another lawyer.
One thing to that point, Tracy, that I have been encouraging clients to ask, because I think that a lot of times attorneys will say, oh, yeah, we've worked with narcissists. Oh, yeah, and like, oh, no big deal. We've done it before. But I have encouraged them to take it a step further and say, okay, first of all, when have you worked? Like, give me an example of a time that you've worked in a situation where the other party had some of those characteristics of a narcissist, and what was the outcome? Or how did you handle that situation? And ask for specifics, because I think a lot of times they're, oh, yeah. I mean, they just overgeneralize. And people are like, well, they told me that they, are familiar. They've worked with hundreds of people who have been in this spot. Well, maybe they have, but were they successful?
Well, there's two parts of that. And I have a whole chapter on questions to ask your lawyer in the book. However, like if along the lines of what you were just saying, it's, what did you learn from that situation, Mr. Lawyer? How would you have done it differently? And what can I expect if this is happening? If you represented so many, you would know they're going to smear, they're going to lie, they're going to hide, they're going to, obstruct. If your lawyer is telling you those things versus the flowery, salesman thing, oh, sure, we can handle that, right? That's not going to help you. If you get to the point where you are questioning a lawyer, speak up, ask them questions, get that information. What does it mean? And, how would you handle it if they did blank? And, in the past, if you've worked with them and someone was being gaslit, what advice did you give your client? So the more
Yep.
you are like really digging into their knowledge as opposed to their fluffy answer, the more you'll know if this is the right lawyer for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, so then for the people that are experiencing, gaslighting from one or more people as they're going through this, what are some suggestions that you would have on how to deal with it? What strategies could you suggest to our listeners?
Well, get help, get support is the most important thing, right? That is the purpose of a coach or even a therapist that understands narcissism. But as you are going through and finding that it is gaslighting, know your truth. Don't absorb what they are saying. They're saying you're a bad parent or you stole money or you did this. Did you? No, I should have asked them to prove that I was a thief because I never presented any papers I'm like, what did I steal? That's what we should have been digging into versus me with my sword up defending myself that I didn't steal. So if I knew my truth, which I did, I was just so uncertain about court, and the fear and all of that paralyzed me. But if you know your truth, you know you're a good parent, then we are also getting kind of a glimmer on that you're a bad parent, kind of commentary from them. This is going to be their strategy. They have just tipped their hand. So if they're saying you're a bad parent or you stole money, how do you defend that? You put your energy into that versus freaking out about it. Freak out, talk to your therapist, talk to your coach, get the truth, and then get strategies. You know what? If they're going to say you're a bad parent, let's just pull up the roster. Who's going to prove that you're a good parent? Who made all the doctor's appointments? Who did this? Who takes them to soccer? Who does this? You start to build up arsenals, if you need them, of people that will testify against the lie, right? And get some kind of depositions if need be, right? So if you know that this is what they're going to attack you with, I got proof for that, no problem, right? But instead, when we are in that hypervigilant, freaked out, fearful stage, we are going to shut down and freeze, right? It's just going to happen. But when you are working with someone that's going, oh, you know what? They might say you're a bad parent. There's no proof and evidence, and the court won't care for this particular thing. The court will care about that one. Let's put our energy into defending that and not that. So someone that has experience is going to guide you through what's the most important thing to put our energy into, and what we can go, yeah, he said it, but there's nothing there, so I'm not going to waste my time. And that gives the survivor sort of a place of comfort to go, okay, that isn't, I shouldn't put all my energy into fighting this. I'll gather evidence to prove contrary. That is a place where they can actually start to do things to defend themselves, and that empowers them.
Well, and I love that. I love that because, of course, with the, hey, you stole money or whatever, and you're like, oh, well, goodness. I mean, there was never any actual, convictions of that. Like we pull up the court records, there was nothing that ever said that I stole money from somewhere. I've never shoplifted and, whatever. So, like, I think it's looking at it from that perspective where, yeah, is there actually the documentation to support that? And no, right? And so I love that. I think that's really, really helpful. And that is all about, those strategy pieces are certainly super helpful. But again, you need to be working with a team of people that know how to help you kind of build out that case because and where's the supporting documentation? Where is the supporting documentation that you stole money? Like there isn't any. So I love that.
And one more thing, that whatever they are accusing you of, they're doing. That's projection, right? You're a bad parent. They know they are, so they got to claim the good parent card. And that's what that is, right? And one of the first lines in the book is they're going to rewrite history, right? Divorce is a game to a narcissist, and they've got to be the victim and the hero. And so if this is their goal, right? Okay, well, that's their goal. And they're accusing you of stealing money. That means look a little deeper, call up Rhonda and get her to find where they're hiding it, because everything they're doing is a projection of, everything they're saying is a projection of what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
So that's another thank you warning flag. And now I see where to chase that money. Good, thanks.
I love the attitude behind it too, because again, I think it just helps lighten it a little bit when it is so heavy. Certainly helpful for sure. So, okay, kind of along those lines. So we've talked about the gaslighting and some things to be doing there. And again, I'm seeing it as that they're giving us kind of a glimpse into their playbook, right, of what they're doing and how we can best position for each of those issues that they're bringing up. In addition to that, I think one thing that is helpful is that emotional resilience of what can people be doing, right, to address the fears. So that they can become, resilient as they're going through this process and beyond.
Well, I think identifying and learning what your fears are is first, right? You're just fearful. And, if you walk around with this big I'm fearful hat on, we can't address a single thing. I'm fearful that I'll lose my children. I'm fearful that I won't have enough money. I'm fearful blank, 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 right? We're going to have a billion fears. So we map it out. And, let's use the one that I will not be able to financially take care of myself. What will I do? How will I survive? Right? We take that fear, and it's very much like the truth in the other part we just talked about is what's the truth of that you will not be able to survive. Okay, so you might have to get a different place to live, and you might have to get a job. I catastrophized my fear of not being able to financially take care of myself to the point that I was doing more damage to myself than anything else, because I would be like, I'll never be able, and I catastrophize this, and I teach a catastrophizing class on negative thoughts. And I tell the girls, I'm like, you know what? I had myself at 80 years old because I lost all my savings and bankrupt after $100,000 divorce. So I catastrophized myself that I was going to be cleaning the schools late at night at 80 years old and microwaving my cat food. Like in a place that I was more frozen instead of action, right? So if you look at what's the proof that might happen, and yeah, okay, well, I might have to get a job, might have to change this, might have to rent and never own again. Okay, fine. Might have to get a different car. You analyze and you look at the things that are fearing you. How will I survive? What do apartments look like if I have to leave my house? Well, okay, will I get enough money for that? Well, how much will I have to make in a job? You are building all of the proof against the fear, and you look at it, right? What's the evidence that that's going to happen? There isn't any evidence, but okay, when we sell the house, I'm going to get this much money. Well, does that give me a little more financial peace? Yes, it does, right? So knowing the truth in that arena, whatever your fears are, have to be guided by what's my strategy if this happens? So is it going to happen? What's the likelihood of it happening? What can I do to prevent it from happening? What's the worst case scenario of it happening? Okay, you're going to eat cat food and microwave it at 80 years old, sweep in the school. Okay. Those are things that we build in our head. As soon as you can get a leverage onto the fact that, I've got a plan, I will be okay. It will be different, but I don't have to fear, because the unknown is always what we fear. So no matter what their fear is, looking at that and just dissecting it and giving them solutions to, okay, so you'll be able to afford, and this is your expertise, you'll be able to afford a $2,000 a month rent or mortgage, and here's what you can do in the future, right? Working with someone like you is vital if they've got that financial fears, because they are just blind and they don't know until someone like you comes in and gives them that help.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think, being able to identify really what needs to be coming in, for example, right, each month, whether that's from support, whether that's from a job, whether that's from savings, whatever, and mapping that out has definitely helped give people some sense of peace of mind. And the other part of it too is then when their spouse says, oh, well, I'm going to be homeless, or I'm living in an efficiency apartment, and they still make 5 times as much more than my clients, we've got some ways to really kind of debunk that and say, listen, at the end of the day, I don't want you feeling bad about what you're getting for support, because his income minus the support minus his expenses, which he disclosed, are actually more than yours already. His lifestyle is continuing to stay the same. He's still in the black. You, on the other hand, right? I mean, need that support coming in to break even. And so it helps with just kind of empowering them to go in and say, I know that he said he's going to be homeless, but we don't have any evidence to back that up.
Gaslighting, right? That is also, gaslighting is there's no money. So as we tie those kind of
Yes.
there's no money. I'm going to be homeless. Like, wah. You know what? The numbers don't show that, but you go ahead and you catastrophize your little homelessness and living in an efficiency apartment when you make $400,000.
Yep.
You go dance that dance, but I know the truth.
Yep.
That on paper, not so much.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's the other part too, Tracy, is that, people need the truth tellers that are part of their, conversation. And I think sometimes the attorneys come off as, and again, there are great attorneys, but there are certainly some that just get so stuck in like, oh, well, here it is, this is black and white. If that was the case, you wouldn't have had a divorce that went on for years and years. It would be so much simpler because there'd be no question, there would be no gray area, there would be full transparency, and we wouldn't be even having these types of conversations. But that's not the case. It's not black and white. Everything's negotiable.
Mhm.
Each situation is different. You get 5 different judges and 5 different outcomes in the same county.
Mhm.
So that just goes to show, right, that again, people need people in their lives that are going to help them really get clear on what's going on, get the facts so that they can really stand in their power as they're going against these types of situations, and make sure that they've got the right team of people. That resiliency is important. And I think the other part too that I love is, the work that you and I are doing, man, we want to leave them better. When the divorce is over, they now have a toolbox of confidence and strategies and things that they can use, because most likely they're still going to be dealing with their ex after the divorce is over, especially if they're minor kids, right? And so now we've empowered them beyond the divorce process, which I just think is so fantastic.
Yeah. And I run women groups online, and empowering them to take back their emotional resilience, to understand those fears, let go of the anger, understand the triggers and process them so that they are not poke, and you go down. Poke, I know how to trigger you. Poke, and then you're like, you become a puddle of water because you don't know how to deal with the triggers. So if you learn these strategies to not let what they're doing or saying get to you, my God, you are so much more empowered because they're not taking you down every 5 minutes, because that's their game. If they can just keep you in a place of just total confusion, total fear, total anxiety, then you will not be able to have the strength and wherewithal to fight for yourself, to
Yeah.
be thoughtful, to go, yeah, that's a good thing to say I am a bad mother, but go ahead, prove it, right? No one's going to have that attitude. I say that because I'm here and not there, but I help my clients get to that place of, there's no proof of that. Let's not worry, and let's get proof of the opposite, so that when we get there and they throw up that hand and go, she's a bad parent. Okay, prove it. What evidence do you have? Oh, I yelled at you once because you were screaming at me. That is not exactly bad parenting. They'll use dumb examples like that, but we're going to have a whole pile of papers that show that everyone that's ever been in contact with you and your children, from the soccer coach to the doctor to the kids therapist, knows that you were a good parent. And that helps just call them a liar. And when we prove that they are a liar, it sheds doubt on every other word that they say in the courtroom, right? So we prove one battle, we can easily cast doubt on all the other lies that they're saying.
Yeah. No, for sure. And, I couldn't help but think of, like, as we're talking about this, it takes me back to like elementary school, right? When the kids were like, bullying kids, right? Who do they bully? The ones that, allow it to happen, the ones that are unscathed by it, impacted by it. They're like, well, this isn't fun anymore. Off to our next person, and so it's just kind of like, that's it in its simplest form. That's
Absolutely.
what's happening.
Absolutely. Narcissists are school bullies. They started when they were 8 and they never stopped, right? That's how they gained this control over people. We don't think about it. And I have so many clients with narcissistic children, and 50-50 shot if you had a narcissistic parent that they're going to learn and adapt these behaviors as their own. But we can also save our children by
Yeah.
teaching them this isn't right, and that's not the way we do things here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so one other thing that I know that I would love to kind of chat about during our time together is, and this is a big one for me, and I love it that you put it in your book because this is something that I find I mention to my clients on a regular basis, and that is, listen, sometimes when we're working on things, you've got to keep it close to the vest. And you articulated in your book as saying, hey, keep your plans secret, right? Let's talk a little bit about that because I think women feel like, well, if I share, God, we're going to be able to link arms, we're going to be able to work together, we're going to, it's going to smooth out the ride. And in fact, it sometimes does the opposite. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So whenever, people discover things, like let's say I just discovered a Swiss bank account. Oh, you have a Swiss bank account? How dare you? And they go right to the ex and they make these accusations. They give away their hand. This is poker, people. This is, you do not share your hand with the whole table. Hey, everyone, I've got this. No, we don't do that, right? If you discover something, and we call it leverage, if you discover something like that, they've hidden and got a Swiss bank account, we put it in court. We don't give them time to close the account. Like my husband had a $5 million Swiss bank account, and I had the statements. And I don't know if we announced it beforehand, but by the time him and his mommy and daddy got on the stand, they simply said, we closed that. Sorry, don't have it anymore. Don't know when we closed it. No, we don't have any reference to $5 million. Really? Right? But we gave away the hand, and they had all the excuses. They had their defense all set up because we gave them that hand. Had it been more secretive and we, threw it out there, hey, here's some statements, they'd be on the stand with their chin on the floor and their lawyer would be yelling at them for never telling them these facts, right? But when we give away to the narcissist anything from our strategy to what you want, I want this, I want that, well, then you're not going to get it, right? They've already got it planned in. So if you can just avoid communication as far as anything divorce, if you got a co-parent, deal with that. But if you are like, again, we just found this great piece of evidence, shh, don't tell anyone, don't tell them. You run with it to your lawyer, you get backup documentation, and then you hit them with it in the courtroom so that they can react to it there. Or if you're going into mediation, we've got this leverage. Do you want, if you're a pastor and, everyone thinks you're greater than this, but you just stole money, would you like that exposed? Because if we go to court, this is coming out in court, right? Public information. So again, that can be used both in mediation or in the courtroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that play out a lot when it comes to, like, we work with a private investigator, and there's times before people will even file that we'll do an asset search. And I tell my clients, I said, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to hang on to that. We're going to keep it over here. We're going to see what they disclose on their financial disclosure statement, and we're going to compare it to what the private investigator has found. And it's been great because we do have the supporting backup documentation. Oh, they own 2 properties in Utah, or they own real estate, or they actually co-own a business, and then we can go back and say, oh, hey, well, there was this stuff that wasn't on there, is this, right? And it's been really, really helpful for people to be able to have that as part of the strategy. And again, there is this internal, I think, particularly for us as women, there is this internal dissonance when we feel like we're being secretive, we feel like we're lying, but we have to understand that, it is temporary. This information will come out, the information you're holding on to, right? It will come out. It's just a matter of when, and it's a matter of how. And so I think that will maybe hopefully help ease some of that internal angst that people feel because they feel like they're not being transparent.
And you just hit it. I was writing down, I'm like, oh, we got to say this because you just hit the nail on the head, right? When victims are trying to keep these secrets and you're telling them, let's not tell them about the discovery, let's wait for the PI to come back to us, right? Whatever the thing is, if you are telling it and you're feeling like a liar, or you are feeling like a bad person, oh, I'm feeling really bad, I shouldn't be, whatever, it's what the victims are going through emotionally. And so again, having that grounding person in your life to go, okay, I know that it feels like you're a liar, but in this case, again, secrets, we must keep our cards in our face and not to the other team. And well, we've been married for 30 years. You know what? This is not marriage for 30 years. This is a war to end a marriage of 30 years. And they are going to do every tactic, from hide those assets to call you names to turn the children against you. That is not something that you should feel bad about, the secret that you're keeping, because they are trying to destroy you. Keep that perspective, and then holding the secret. It's just like, you know what? We had secrets our whole life. It doesn't mean that we're a bad person, and people
Yeah.
need to understand that.
Well, and I think the other thing, just to clarify too, is we're not encouraging people to not disclose information, because I think it's really important. Like we're not obstructing the process for discovery. We're just being strategic on when we share that information, particularly stuff that we have found. Like there's times when women will find things. Like I have a client who found a note that the husband had wrote to the attorney, like an email. She was looking for some stuff in the garage, happened to find this pile and starts looking. And she's like, what the heck is this? She found his notes to the attorney, and it gave us insight. Now her attorney was like, I don't want to know. I don't want to see those documents.
Mhm.
You can tell me about them, but I don't want to see them right now. And so it gave us insight onto what his biggest concern was.
Mhm.
And it happened to be around the business, which I had been advocating that we get some level of valuation on that business. And she was adamant that initially she was on the fence of what she wanted to do it or not. And it was very important that it was helpful that she found that, because then she found that it was really important to him that he didn't want his business valued for obvious reasons, right? So I had reached out to the attorney and said, hey, I'm really sensing that we need to explore this. So he called the next day to basically get in the calendar of the person who we would use for the business valuation. And literally the next day, opposing counsel called that same person. A week, it took dibs on us. And I thought, if I wouldn't have said that,
Mhm.
they would have called. But remember, they didn't want the business valued, but yet they're reaching out to the business valuation expert that we called. Like,
Mhm.
what the heck, right?
And that
So
always
it's
have to wonder, as how much are they spying on you?
right. Could be. I mean, there's certainly those aspects of it, but I think at the end of the day, we have a lot of insight, and I think women are really, they themselves make really good private investigators when they just look for stuff, right? Like just look, keep your eyes open, what comes in through the mail, what do you see online? I mean, they just find that they're not even half the time looking, they're not even really looking for it. Oh, look, there's a bunch of stuff in the recycling bin that never got recycled.
Or
Statements.
going through statements, going, wow, that's so strange that every month there's a payment to Citibank. I don't think we have anything. But when you're going through, oh, could we get those Citibank statements?
That's right.
I got
That's right.
calls at the marital home while we were going through it from Citibank, which is why it sticks in my brain. Thank you, sir, for opening your new Citibank card with $100,000, leverage. We are so excited that you are partnered with us. And then they never disclosed it. So I recorded the recording. It was a voice message. I recorded it, brought it in. And when they didn't give any papers until the sixth trial. But there's no Citibank statements on there. So we never got the information, but we could make him look bad. And he was in contempt 6 times for doing that sort of thing. So again, the more you search, the more you look, even if it's things that you do have control of, finding a gold mine like that in the garage, everyone should have that gift.
Yep.
I was given a gift that my father-in-law was so lazy that he would never delete his emails. And for 10 years of marriage, twice a year, he would ask me, could you just fix that? Could you just make the 10,000? I can't send any emails. Could you just delete them for me? So during the divorce, he asked me and gave me permission in an email. Could you please do this for me just one last time? I'm in the middle of hell with him and his family, my father-in-law. And he was like, please go delete my emails and fix it so I could keep on emailing Tracy. So I go into his email, and what's there? Plans with my husband, plans with the lawyer. We're going to move the case to New York so she can't afford it. We're going to fight her like this. And there was even an email that he had sent to my husband, who was living in his house at the moment, and said, we know you love Chris, my son, and he's been your child for 10 years. But at this point, we're telling you to never talk to him again. Do you understand? It could be perceived as financial responsibility. And he said, okay, no problem. In this email, I read it. And then they never freaking talked to my kid again. So like, this was really impactful, and it really helped me later in life. My son was older, he was in college, but I was able to show him. He's like, why won't they? What did you do that they won't talk to me anymore? I lost a grandmother and a grandfather and an aunt and a father. And I could easily show him that again. He's in his 20s. I could say, you know what? It wasn't about you. It was about the money. But all of this intel is essential if you can find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know that we have just scratched the surface, my friend.
Yeah.
Oh,
A
but
300-page book to find it all.
I know. And I'm just so grateful. I know that I was on your podcast and so grateful that I could host and facilitate the conversation on all of this stuff because there is so much. But I think when people have the right team of people in their corner that are advocating for them, that are giving them the right tools, the right information, the right strategies, it is certainly very powerful. So thank you so much for your time today. As we wrap up, I would love it if you could just little send off of encouragement, word of advice, just kind of in a real quick little sentence or snapshot for people as we're wrapping up today.
It will end and you will be okay. No matter what it looks like and how scary it is, it's going to be okay. It's not maybe what you have had, and you may not have money for retirement and you may lose some things, but you will be okay. And hold on to that, because we're always holding on to the fear of the cat food lady in school. So hold on to the truth and hold on to that you'll be okay, and you will.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for your time. Again, all of Tracy's contact information is listed in the show notes, so don't hesitate to reach out to her, follow her on social media, check out her book. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.